Well, good morning. Let's do a little quick Fleabay edition here before I start my Sunday morning. Fairly quiet here this morning. It's still early and house is all closed up, kind of smoky out and about, and air conditioning still on, so we're not listening to the water running in the whiskey barrels out the window and things like that. So anyway, I've got a few little things that have come to my attention here, and there's a couple of eBay sellers I'm going to rag on a little bit here this morning. So let's start off looking at Atlas milling machine stuff. And most of these are new listings, although there's some stuff that's been here for a few days that I've kind of been watching, and we've been tallying up some parts prices and things like that. Now, one of the first things I see here is a set of replacement handles. And this seller has a supply of these, or a supplier for these, because I've seen them listed several times. And it's not just one or two. We have, I'm looking at one first listing has 2 ball handles for supposedly on the Atlas Craftsman, and there's a listing right below that that's a new listing for a single handle. So the first listing says 1 set, new old stock lathe, mill, ball crank handle set, 3/8 ID, Atlas Craftsman, etc. And it's starting out on a bid. I've seen these listed for a fixed price, buy it now, of I think about $50 for the set. So you can take that for what it's worth, but you look at the listing, and there again we start off 1 set, new old stock ball crank, new old stock mill, 1 set, new old stock lathe, mill, ball crank handle set, 3/8 ID, Atlas Craftsman, etc. And I'm not even looking at shipping. Shipping's $385 or something, but okay, so the description is up for purchase, best offer, auction. 1 set of 2 3/8 ID by 1/16 keyway by 275 inch vintage style ball cranks for bench mills, lathes, Atlas Craftsman, etc. This is a set of miniature ball cranks. I'm not sure of the exact original application, but these are suitable as replacements for Atlas Craftsman and other benchtop mill and lathe machines. I refer to these as miniature as they are far smaller than the typical Bridgeport style ball crank handles with larger bore. Please see the pics with the scale for size reference. If you have had to look for replacement ball cranks for some of these benchtop mills and lathes, you will know these are not easy to find. Units are new, never installed, but do have some minor shelf wear. Please see the pics of actual items. Then it gives the dimensions again. Units appear to be chrome or nickel plated. Note, the Atlas mill I have uses a 3/16 Woodruff keyway, so the keyway may need to be opened up a bit with a filer broach or Woodruff keyway on the machines replaced with narrower one. Of course, this is not a big issue. I would just like to be upfront that I cannot warn or provide advice on exact application other than I used a set on my Atlas mill by swapping in a narrower keyway. Picture of the actual items except for the last 2, which are shown for size reference. I have more of these available. If looking for a full matching set for your machine or additional pieces, please send me a note. And he's got his terms down there with all his disclaimers and all that good stuff. Now, the issues I have with this, and this is a seller that's been selling for a while, so this is not a newbie mistake or not understanding what's going on or anything like that. I have a couple of problems with this. One is in the description itself. It says 1 set new old stock. Well, they're not new old stock. They are a new stock replacement item. Now, when we look at eBay's descriptions and things like that, this is probably acceptable. When I see a listing that says new old stock and it's being touted as basically for the Atlas machines, Atlas Craftsman machines, that is said with the assumption or with the knowledge that new old stock would be a new item that is old stock that has been sitting on a shelf someplace. These are not that. These are a replacement from someplace made out of Chinesium. So there's a supplier for these. Now, I do not know exactly what these fits. I've looked at a couple of places. They are very similar to the little 7x10 or 7x10, I guess, 7x9 inch lathe that Harbor Freight sells. They're a little bit different, but they're from that same vintage of machine or the same manufacturer of machines. So they're either replacement ball handles for those machines or something similar to that. And these are being purchased as a replacement part by the seller for, probably $3, $4, $5 a piece. I don't know what they are, but and I'm just pulling numbers off the top of my head. But I would suspect these are being ordered, either as a replacement from the machine manufacturers, or they're being ordered off of Banggood or Alibaba or something like that. So these are not a new old stock Atlas part. And in the listing he does state that, but they're not a direct replacement. So I have a problem with that. The other thing that I have an issue with, and there again we're splitting hairs here, is he says, I'm not sure of the exact original application. That may be true, but I would suspect that when you have multiples of something you're selling and you have a supply of them or an ongoing supply, you know exactly where they came from, you know exactly what they fit. So I'm going to call BS on this listing. So most of these I've seen listed as buy it nows, in that $50 range for a pair, $25, $30 a piece. So you're being ripped off. So anyway, there's that one. And I don't know if we come back to the seller or not, but those are the main things I see under, we'll go on down here under the milling machine parts. Knee mill Atlas with a question mark, vintage horizontal mill carriage, lead screws, nuts and gear, pre-owned, $300, zero bids, $37 shipping this is from Poland. Those are not Atlas. Those, I don't know what those fit. Those could be I have no idea what those fit, but those are definitely not Atlas. We go on down, Atlas mill machine cross slide M1-5 with Gibbs screws, lock handles, parts only $150 in shipping. Fairly complete. This is a part that I'm looking for that I refuse to pay this much money for. I think these are, there again, we're way overpriced on this stuff. And there's a couple of things that I've seen on listings that we'll get to here today, that there's an assembly that I don't think is priced, out of line. It's an assembly I could use because there's two components on there, one of which is been replaced on one of my machines with a non-Atlas part. It's fully functional, but it's not the correct part for that. And one of the other parts on my machine is damaged, and I would like to have the replacement. Like I say, I don't think the price is out of line actually for the complete assembly. I'm not going to buy it because I'm doing my best to kind of practice what I preach here. I'm trashing on these parts as being overpriced, and these people should not be parting out machines, and that's what's happened in this case. So I'm gonna wait. Eventually I will have to come up with either my reproduction parts to go back on there or replacement parts, but I'm gonna wait until they're definitely at a reasonable price or a more than reasonable price, and we'll see what happens there. But anyway, that's the deal there. So yeah, this is actually a part that I need here, this cross slide, but not going to happen, and I won't give $150 for it. That's too much. Those should be with all of the handles, the Gibbs, with everything that's there. That's probably a $75 casting, and I would be willing to pay that. I will not give $150 for it. I won't give $100 for it. They're overpriced. So. Okay, here's one, and this is a seller that I've seen, and this is one that there again today it's mainly we're taking good machines and parting them out, and we know how I feel about that. That irritates the crap out of me. So this is from a seller that has an Atlas milling machine, cross slide lead screw, hand wheel, nuts, etc. And it shows the handle on there, and it does have the lead screw and the nut, and this is for the cross slide, of course, on the Atlas mill. And he's got pretty good pictures, and this is a seller that's been around for a while, and it's sold for parts are not working, $100. When you look at this, there is absolutely nothing on this machine or on this listing, on this set of parts, that if you have and we're going to look at this from the aspect of you have a complete machine. May not be in the best condition, but you have a complete machine, whether it's a lathe, a mill, a shaper, and you're wanting to improve it. So you've got slop in your cross slide, you're missing the handle, whatever the case may be. Out of this assembly, there is absolutely nothing that you're going to be able to utilize that's going to show an improvement on your machine. Absolutely nothing. As we've talked before, the nut is wore out, whether it is or not, and you can't tell from this picture, and I could look at more pictures here. I don't know if they show it yeah, I guess they do show it disassembled. Yeah, there's a lot of wear on the nut, on the brass nut. And I'm just looking at the second picture here, and for just this little Fleabay edition, I'm not going to go back and take pictures of this. This is a as we go along type of thing. The nut shows wear in it. You've got a Woodruff key, you've got the dial collar, you've got the little adapter, and I'm not even going to look up numbers, that goes into the front of the knee. This is the tapered adapter. If you're going to replace yours, you're better off probably to replace it with the 1-inch diameter straight shank turning in that area so that it will accept the overarm support. If you're doing that much work to it, whether you have an overarm support or ever use one, you're probably better off to have, if you're better off to do that. Now, the hand wheel itself, and I guess we could look at the description here. Atlas milling machine, complete cross-slide lead screw assembly, including the hand wheel, dial collars, nuts, Woodruff key, etc. Seen in the pictures. Condition: the handle is broken off the hand wheel and brazed back on. This is an ugly repair, but it's solid. Also, I think the dial collar lock screw is a non-original replacement. Yes, it's just a screw. Otherwise, everything is in good used condition with normal wear as seen in the pictures. Now, I have noticed that we've gone away from saying, in most of these sellers that have been around even a little bit, they're no longer saying these parts are in excellent condition. We've done away with that crap. So now this is a problem that I have with this seller. This is another one he's parting out machines. When this assembly was on the machine, it worked fine. The wheel turned easily to move the cross slide in and out smoothly. This worked fine on the machine that I took it off of, and now it is clean and ready to go on your machine. These parts came from an Atlas mill that I was hoping to get running. I entirely disassembled the whole machine, cleaned all the parts, lubricated them, and attempted to reassemble everything. As I did this, it became apparent that the machine had too many missing and compromised parts to make getting it functioning a realistic goal. So now I am parting out the machine. That's bullshit. If you've got a machine that you've already put that much into, and I think I've covered this before, if you're not willing to spend the time doing it, why don't waste everybody's time and don't be selling the crap parts. Now, the idea that, the lead screw or the thumb screw may not be original. No, to lock the collar, it's not original. It's a machine screw. It's a grubby looking machine screw. They're a 1032, I think. 1024 is what they used, one of the two. The hand wheel's junk. It's been repaired, and where he says it's been brazed on and is ugly. Well, when you try and braze Zamac, you run into problems, and you do make it pretty ugly. So, yeah, it's nasty looking. They've managed to get the hand wheel stuck back in there, but it's crap. What else do we have for? Yeah, the whole back or the whole end of that has been melted away there on the hand wheel. So the hand wheel is normally the only thing you find that's been damaged that that people are going to replace that's readily available, or something that normally would need to be replaced that can be easily replaced, and this one's no good. The lead screw and nut, they're going to be worn. We've covered that before. If you're that desperate for one, you're better off putting a new replacement nut on. Is going to be your minimal fix. Usually the lead screws are worn too, so you almost need to turn a new lead screw, and that is within the capabilities of most of the home shops if you've got a lathe with threading capabilities. As long as you take your time and are careful and get your tools ground properly and everything, it's not that difficult to turn that Acme thread to fit the nut, to fit a new replacement nut that you've got. So yeah, this is one, I have no use for these sellers like this. And then we're back down into the stuff that I've covered before. Now, I do see, and I've been following it, there's and I believe it's the same seller. Let me look. Yep, it's the same seller is selling the Gearbox on the milling machines. These you don't see come up very often. I've already started working on the Atlas shaper cover that normally breaks. If things progress as they normally are, why this Gearbox housing and probably the internal gears will at some point be reproduced, and we'll have those available. Now, this listing started off, it had a buy it now of $150 when it started, and we're down to the last 12 hours. So it had a buy it now of $150, and I think it started at $60 or $80. I don't honestly remember now. Well, now we've got 7 bids on it, at least a couple of guys looking at it, and it's up to $120. So these guys are going to fight for it and literally give more than what the buy it now would have been for it. And that's unfortunate. Until we stop supporting these guys parting out machines, why we're not going to get anywhere with this. And this is another one, the same thing. He took it off of the machine. Let's see, includes the feed gear case MF1, feed gear cover MF2, and the Atlas nameplate, sliding gear shaft MF20A, the bolts that attach the gearbox to the machine, and all the internal gear shafts, bushings, pins, studs, but missing the lever and handle M162, the yoke MF16, and the connecting shaft M163. And in order to sell it, instead of saying that yes, you have to have those parts to operate this machine, it's these parts are normally used to engage and disengage the table power feed, but this could also be done less conveniently by pulling the sliding gear shaft in and out. Yeah, we're going to tell you what we need to tell you to get you to give us your money, is what he's telling you. Well, we've added some pictures. We've edited this, so let's see what foolishness we've added here, because this is added since I saw it last. Okay, we've added some internal gearbox pictures. Now, he's already told you that he started cleaning up this machine and everything internally, and the gearbox is not part of what he's done. And as you can tell, I already have some contempt for this seller. And internally, they're again functional, but by no means perfect. And in his edited note down here, at the request of a potential buyer, I took the gearbox apart again tonight to check it for him or her. I took a picture of the inside, which I have added. There are no broken or chipped gear teeth. There is some slight burring of the teeth where they mesh, as I think you can see in the picture. The black stuff that you see in the gears is new gear lubricant that I put on. There is no play in the bushings. When I turn the shaft with my fingers, all the gears and everything else turns smoothly. The guts of this are in great shape. Great shape. Okay. Okay, if you want to believe that, believe it. Keep bidding it up. Not this guy. When I look at the housing, the inside of the housing, there's whether the grease on the gears is new or not, and it may very potentially be. When I look down on the bottom of the housing, I see some grease that is awful dark colored down in the corner. You know, down on the other side, it looks like there's some packed in grease down there. Now, the grease that is actually on top may very well be new grease, but what's down in the corners is old stuff. The outside of this, you know, the nuts and stuff that you see on the outside of the box are kind of grungy. So it may have been lubed inside, but it's got some caked on grease down in there. When I look at the gears, the bevel gear itself looks pretty good from what I can see. The straight gear looks fairly good from what I can see. The wider angle gear, the corners are rolled down on that. You know, it probably works fine, but it's got a lot of wear there. So, you know, great shape, excellent shape. No, it's not. So, anyway, I've ranted and raved enough. You know, this machine is being parted out. I have a lot of contempt for the sellers for doing that at this point in time. So now we go on to shapers. And there's a whole listing, and I won't go into it. There's parts for a 7B here, and it's a machine that's being parted out. All of it's listed as pre-owned. We'll look at one right here, Atlas 7B Shaper feed nut, S7-32 feed nut, used, $36.99, $485. Why do you want to give $36.99 for a used one when you can buy somebody's replacement for that $40 or $45? What's happened is they're parting out these machines, they sell off the good stuff, and then you see some of the leftover parts that aren't popular or don't sell are sold at a, you know, less than premium price type of thing, because eventually the thinking is that eventually a pigeon will come on and buy them even at the price that they listed them for. And you know, sometimes they do, sometimes they set up, because I see some parts that are now, some of the castings, like apron castings for the lathe and things, that have been driven way down. You know, we're not seeing nearly the price being asked for those. You know, when you can buy a stripped apron for $15 in shipping where they used to be 30 or 40. Why? That's, you know, now this there again, this nut, as shown, in overall good used condition. It's used, you know, it's a piece of shit. It's wore out. Don't put used parts back on your machine. Now, the problem I'm having here is this seller is parting out this shaper, because I went back and I looked through the listings, and I've watched over the last couple of weeks, some of the parts for this machine have already been sold. Things like there was a good cross-feed cover. Well, it was just the cover, and it was reasonably priced. I think I said it was reasonably priced here, you know, a few days ago when I was looking at it. It sold right away for $79, I think, if I remember correctly, and then shipping. That part has already been gone, and I think there's probably been some other parts I can't think of off the top of my head, but from this same seller. I went through and was adding up this morning just what was still listed, and I quit at about $2,100 for the parts being offered for this machine. And they're all on a buy it now. You know, we're putting them out on a buy it now. We're not interested in auctioning them off. We figure we can sell them out for this amount of money and get them, you know, get our money out of them. So we're stripping out machines, perfectly good machines, and here's a countershaft hanger and pulley assembly, used, $100. And this was actually the part that I was looking for that I could use now. And now I'm reading a little bit closer, and I'm thinking it's not a good deal. 7B Shaper countershaft hanger and pulley assembly, S7-21A, S7-124, and 10-80. On mine, single belt pulley on the one end is a replacement of something else. It's not an original Atlas pulley. So consequently, it's a little bit larger on my machine, so I can't put one of my guards back on it, which was one of the original things that I was after. So when I saw this assembly for $100, I thought that's a pretty good deal. So it does have the correct pulley, and eventually I will find one of these pulleys for a reasonable cost. On my machine, it's a 5-step pulley, or it's a 4-step pulley and another small pulley that the brake lever activates or actuates into. Mine has been repaired. It was repaired before I bought it. It runs fine. It doesn't, it does okay. But there again, that's one that I would like to have back to original. Now, when I get to reading this description, and one of the main problems with these is use some bends on the large end of the stepped pulleys. So, and I haven't even looked at the pictures on this to see what it actually looks like. Yeah, it's all wonky, out of shape, and somebody's beat on it, or the machine has fallen over, or been rammed into something, or probably usable. Probably would run okay. It's not something I'm willing to put on my machine because it's no better than what I've got. And that's why mine was replaced, is it got banged, dropped, tipped over, whatever the case may be, and broke out part of the large step on that pulley. So the same things happened here. It looks like somebody may have tried to straighten it out because it's definitely wavy on that outside edge. And that's a place where it's eventually going to fail. So why would you want to? And it doesn't show that pulley from the end. There's no view of that from an end view of that pulley. So what's happened on the inside of that, or how bad it's beat up, I don't know. But yeah, I'm not doing that. So that there's only one pulley on there that would be functional for me. Now I see the listings down below farther on. There's another one of these, but they want $225 for it. And it's from another seller that's been around forever. Might as well look while I'm here. It's got the brake assembly and everything on it. Looks to be in relatively good condition. It's got the mounting brackets and things. So there's quite a bit more to that one than there is to the other one for $100, but I'm not willing to give that much more for it either. Plus he wants another $83 shipping, so that ends up being a $300 part. So let's see what else we see as victims to the eBay sellers here. The rest of that's mostly just the same parts that have been there, but yeah, they're parting them out, trying to get big bucks, and the only way we're going to stop that is just to stop buying them. I mean, we're going to have to make our own decisions as to what we're willing to spend on our machines. But until we start saying enough of this, why, it's the same old thing. When we look at lathe stuff, whole bunch of change gears for the Atlas lathe from a seller that's been around here for a while. And there again, we've gone from saying excellent to good used change gear. And he's got a whole list of them here. When you look at these gears, they don't look in bad condition. They're probably all good usable gears. Be aware of, these are not in the condition that they would have been in before he decided to sell them. This seller apparently has a bead blaster that he's got glass beading. I think it's not quite aggressive enough to be sandblasted, but it looks like these have been glass beaded. In some respects, that's good because they are already cleaned up, although if you can, you should be able to get these, and there's another $5 shipping, so you're paying $25 a gear. That's a little bit high. They are cleaned up. Most of these are in relatively good condition, and you can see that for the most part. But there again, by bead blasting or sandblasting, you can also hide some of the imperfections. And if you look through some of these gears, and I've looked through several of them, why they have, there's some of them that have got some tracking patterns on them where they've been run out of spec a little bit. Part of them are burred a little bit, and you can see a couple of them that are scarred up pretty bad where there was some crap that ran in between the gears. So just something to be aware of. And That's probably about all I'm going to spend time doing this morning. Now here's a set of original cast iron legs and the wood top, and this is a new listing. $399.99. Now that's normally what you would, they've been in that $400 range for years. That just seems to be what the legs bring. This one's got the wood top. Now these are listed as $399.99 or best offer. But then for shipping, they want another $216. That's way out of line, you know. If you can have those shipped into you, and I think it's too much, but if you can have those shipped into you for $450, that's probably a reasonable buy if you want an original set of legs. But to give over $600 for a set of cast iron legs is too much. On down through crossfeed knob, $14.99. It's not in great shape, but it's not in bad shape. That's about what it's probably worth. Here on down, this is the same seller. Yeah, this is that same seller. 10-12-inch lathe saddle crossfeed screw and dial assembly. No handle on it. You've got no nut. It's probably in reasonable condition, but if you've got a complete machine, there's nothing here that's any better than what you've got. Now, this looks fairly nice because it's been bee blasted, so it has been cleaned up. By the same token, I'll bet it's been bee blasted, so the any bushings that are in it, and I believe they put, maybe not, I want to say that there's a bushing inside the screwed in section that goes into the saddle. If there's a bushing in there and it's been bee blasted, why, that's junk as far as I'm concerned. That oil light bushing will be gone. So and they may not have put one in there, I don't remember, but nonetheless, there's nothing there that's going to be any better than what you've got, you know. Good used. No, if you've already got one, you've got good used. So that's kind of where that was at. Yeah, now here we've got saddles and apron casting. Atlas Craftsman 10-inch, 12-inch lathe, apron casting, 10F9A, $14.99 and $9.99 shipping. That's a part that if you've got a complete machine, you don't need one. And the reality is, and this is that same seller, what's it say about it? Very good condition on this. Now, the reality is the traverse handles, all of the levers that go in these and the wheels that go on these, unless they run in a oil light bushing, and I think there's only one or two things that do. I think the lead screw runs in a oil light bushing. The other 1, 2, 3, 4 holes that go through all run in that cast iron. After 40 or 50 years, they're worn out. Those holes are all oval shaped. Every one I've ever seen has play in it, because they've all been, they've just worn out over the years. You know, that cast iron is ovaled out, and you know, sometimes just from wear, sometimes from lack of oil, whatever the case may be. But those are worn out too, you know. The only way that you can salvage those, and I've been going to do it on one, and at some point I may pick one up to do it. I've been going to go back and bush those and put oil light bushings in those and see if it makes any noticeable difference. You know, and it probably will. We can probably tighten up machines by doing that, but you've got a fair amount more machining on them to do that. But that's all you've got is a stripped apron there. So it's not going to be any better than what you've got. The idea that you're going to take off your used, wore out apron or whatever the component may be and replace it with one that you purchased off of eBay that somebody else has told you is in good condition or excellent condition, you're not going to be a bit farther ahead. You gain nothing by doing that. So when we stop buying those parts like that, we'll all be better off. Same seller, headstock assembly with back gear assembly and cover, $189.99. $189.99, yeah, and another $60 to ship it. why would you need a complete headstock assembly? And this is a used headstock assembly. It's a Babbitt bearing assembly, which I don't mind the Babbitt bearing assemblies at all. I think they run a little bit quieter than a Timken bearing setup. So that doesn't deter me at all. But you're gaining nothing else. You know, if you've got a completed machine, you're gaining absolutely nothing else by giving them $250 for headstock. You know, it's a waste of money. You know, it's got the cover on it, so what? And it's dirty, grungy looking. I looked at it earlier. The index pin holes have been well used. You know, they're not, and that doesn't in reality mean anything. What it usually is you'll see them ovaled out quite a bit, or the edges burred up on both sides quite a bit, because either they haven't been fully engaged when somebody's been trying to index them. They jump out of back gear and rattle along the edges of them, or you know, something that's not normally a real big issue, but it just shows that they're worn after 40, 50, 60 years. You know, they're not in excellent condition. How is this one listed? Good used headstock assembly. Everything looks good. I see no issues with any of it. Then why did it come off of the lathe? You know, why is it being parted out? That's stupid. Just stupid. So anyway, that's pretty much it. I'm done with my little rant for the day. Yeah, a bunch of smaller parts that we've looked at before. 10-12-inch lathe lead screw bearing, 10F16, pre-owned, $36.45 and $5 shipping. New seller, relatively new seller. Somebody that's decided that they can make their fortune. Condition is used. Please see picture for details. Yep, no, you're gaining nothing. The days of taking the machines, buying parts, which I've done on a couple of machines. That's what I did on my lathe. It's a conglomeration of parts. That's what my next mill will be, is a conglomeration of parts that I've already assembled and or already purchased over the years, because they were specialty parts like the production table and controls. You know, kind of a specialty machine like that. But to take a standard machine and buy parts and assemble it like may have been feasible to do times past, those days are gone. You know, these guys are finding machines for $300, $400, $500. They're getting them at yard sales, they're getting them at swap meets, wherever the case may be. They're getting them relatively cheap. They're bringing them here, putting them on eBay as parts, and trying to triple their money on them, because we are gullible enough to buy those machines, and that will continue to drive the price up too, because there's going to be less and less of those machines to be purchased over time. So, you know, when we say we've had enough of this crap and start producing our own machine or our own parts, and the only way we're going to take an existing machine that we have and significantly improve it is to build our own parts, put new replacement parts on, things like that. There's some sellers that are putting out replacement parts, and I'm kind of watching some of those parts and making a list. I will copy some of those listings with ideas on things that we can show building. The problem that I'm seeing there is they're charging way too much for them. You know, we've seen that with the compound pins that lock the compound, the replacement vice jaws for the milling attachments. I see there's a countershaft conversion for the 10-inch lathe. Conversion. We're going to make it better by putting oil light bushings on. I believe they're wanting $100 for that. It consists of the two, we'll call them bearing holders that mount in the countershaft assembly, and the shaft that goes through. And what they're doing is they're putting an oil light bushing in those holders. They're wanting $100 for that. It's the counter shaft is cold roll steel. It looks like it's nothing spectacular. You could use 12L14 if you want it. Cold roll will probably work just as well. They're polishing that to fit the oil light bushings. Your pulley slides on there. They're cutting a keyway to index that up. There's recesses drilled in both ends to retain the rest of the pulleys in position, and that's what the shaft amounts to. The holders have a hole drilled on either side, just the points to index the adjustments on the counter shaft, and there's an oil light bushing in each of those. Material wise, less than $20, and a little bit of machine time in your shop that's you're doing for your enjoyment anyway, and you should be doing it to improve your machine. So if you feel the need for that, why, build your own. That's a project we'll do here before too long, because they're simple. There's no sense in us spending big bucks on these to supposedly improve our machines when we can be doing it ourselves, So that's where we're at with stuff like that. So I've already shown you quite a few things that you can do in your own shop to save you a whole lot of money and improve your machines, and we'll continue to do that. I've been pretty tied up in the shop on developing a few other products and everything that I've not done as many of those as I would like to be doing, but as I shift focus more and more towards these Atlas machines, I will see more of those projects going on. So anyway, hopefully you find that interesting. We'll be loading some manuals, some Atlas manuals especially, onto the website here this week. I've had a couple of inquiries and one that had asked me about it. I have a tremendous amount of manuals. I've got a pretty good selection of Atlas manuals. Most of them have already been scanned in and I produce, like these machines that I've covered here lately. I've got manuals for all of those. I've got the standard Atlas manuals, parts manuals, and quite a bit of other information. And that's one of the things that I began to rant on eBay about years ago, and this would be back in the 90s, why I started producing manuals when I got my shaper. And I've probably told part of this story, and I'll share more of it as time goes on. But I started doing manuals, and I expanded that, I think, right now in file boxes and about 3 file cabinets. Why I've got, I would guess in excess of 250 manuals for different machine tools, and at one time I reproduced a whole lot of those manuals. I reproduced them from originals that I'd acquired or purchased off of eBay and several other places, and I only did it with original manuals, scanned them in, saved them to computer files, and then I reprinted those out, printed most of the Atlas stuff on cream color cardstock, heavier cardstock, comb bindings on them, and I will say that I was one of the first people to do that on eBay, and I did that for 2 or 3 years, and people discovered that they could literally buy my reproductions, Xerox copy them on cardstock and put a comb binding on them, and then sell them back on eBay again, to the extent that they were literally, I had a couple of guys that were literally using the listings that I listed mine under, that I developed. And I got eBay involved in that a little bit. And eBay, of course, is interested in making their money too. So while they are somewhat fair about things, why their ultimate goal is to make money. No matter who's selling stuff, they're making money. So they didn't really care. So I quit reproducing manuals. I will begin to bring a lot of those back and just list them on the websites. Most of the manuals that you are looking for these machines can be found on vintagemachinery.org for free. There's PDFs there usually that you can download with most of the information, if not all of the information that I have. A lot of those files are also available on the Atlas websites, or not the Atlas website, but the Atlas forum on Groups.io. You can find a lot of those there to download. But if you would like a printed copy of something, why, I'll start putting those back up on the website again as I have time. Anyway, Hopefully you find this a little bit informative. You can use a little bit of the information there. Comments or suggestions, leave them in the comments section for me below. And as always, guys, have a good weekend, and thanks for taking the time to watch.